I'm James Rizzone.
And I'm Miranda Watson. We're the husband and wife writing team that created the military thriller Monroe Doctrine series and the military sci-fi series The Rise of the Republic.
We have some additional content we'd like to share with you guys today, and we hope you'll find it informative and entertaining. We're planning to create more videos similar to this in the future.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get started.
Chapter 24. Bastogne Brigade. 20 October, 1990. 1st Brigade, Tok, vicinity Tara'a, Saudi Arabia. Colonel Tom Hall, the commander of the 1st Brigade, 327th Infantry Regiment, was in his command post, which had, along with the rest of the brigade, moved into their assigned sector some 30 miles south of Massadar. He and his infantry battalion commanders, along with the artillery commander, had looked at their mission, their assigned sector, their assets, and the enemy's capabilities in developing their defensive plan. One of the limitations placed upon them was the use of attack helicopters. General Peters had warned all 3 brigade commanders that the attack helicopter battalions were his for the deep battle mission. They needed to build their defensive plans around the likelihood of not receiving any attack helicopter support. Colonel Hall was a solidly built individual. He had served as a scout platoon leader in Vietnam and followed the usual path for an infantry officer. His career had taken a turn when he'd been selected to be the aide to the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time. That position had put him in contact with the Army's senior and rising leadership. To say Colonel Hall had learned the politics of the Army would be an understatement. He'd learned it well and played it well. He was intensely loyal to those around him, almost to a fault, and he would accept no criticism of his staff, even when they weren't functioning well. All 3 battalion commanders had questioned the brigade staff's decisions, and all 3 had been bitten in the ass. Hall had called the battalion commanders in to discuss their battle plans, as well as the overall brigade defensive plan. Major Clausen, the brigade operations officer, or S3, was responsible for development of the overall plan, which had been slightly modified after Lieutenant Colonel Dan Corey, the 3rd Battalion commander, and Colonel Thomas, the 2nd Battalion commander, had massaged it with Hall. "Sir," Major Clausen started, "the brigade defends the sector with 3 battalions abreast. 1st Battalion defends from Al-Marameh to Abu Haramel. 3rd Battalion defends in sector from Abu Haramel to Soleila Juhayna. 2nd Battalion defends in sector from Soleila Juhayna to a point at..." Clausen read off the military grid coordinates. "The main effort is to 3rd Battalion. The commander's intent is to strike the attacking forces early with long-range fire and close-air support and prevent a penetration of the brigade sector." Lieutenant Colonel Corey had combat experience in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot. After Vietnam, where he'd received his commission to 1st Lieutenant Infantry, he'd slowly transitioned out of flying assignments and into infantry assignments. He had commanded infantry companies in Fort Lewis, Washington, and an airborne infantry company in Alaska. He taught airborne tactics at the infantry school and corps and division operations at the Command and General Staff College. Hall deferred to Corey on many occasions when it came to tactical plans. Corey had covered his tactical plan with Hall and the other 2 battalion commanders and the artillery commander. In short order, they'd see if his and the other plans were actually worth a damn. After all, the enemy always gets a vote. 24 hours earlier, Corey had visited each company and discussed the company defensive plan. Company A was located in the town of Al-Muraba'a, with the main highway from Massadar to Yanbu passing through the town. Unfortunately, an attacking force could bypass the town to the south, but not the north due to the terrain. To the south, it was 1,273 meters of open ground to the next major terrain feature, well within the range of the Tau missile system, and within the range for the most part of the Dragon weapons system, a shoulder-fired anti-tank system with an excellent sight, capable of thermal imaging targets at night. The biggest drawback, however, was the fact that the gunner would be exposed when firing the system, and he had to hold the sight on the target for the entire flight of the missile. Scattered throughout this open area were some orchards and palm groves. Corey didn't want his infantry in those groves, as they would have no escape route if surrounded. Artillery was planned for both areas, and both were assigned target reference points, or TRPs. As Corey and Captain Mulford, the A Company commander, walked through the town, Alpha Gators, as Company A was known, were preparing the town to become a defensive strong point. "Had any problems with the locals, Mulf?" Corey asked, using Captain Mulford's nickname. "No, sir. Most left 48 hours ago. I guess they needed little encouragement when told what was coming and the fact that the king was going to rebuild their town when it was over," Mulf said. "When did the engineers arrive?" Corey asked, noting an engineer vehicle cutting a ditch across the road. "They arrived last night and have been going at it non-stop. I told them the priority was to level the buildings on the perimeter. They set charges and blew them all early this morning." "I was wondering what the noise was this morning. You should have advised the talk you were going to blow them. Scared the crap out of the chaplain," Corey chuckled. As they walked, Captain Mulford began to point out some of the actions they had taken to strengthen their defense. "Sir, each of the two-story buildings has plywood with nails and concertina wire prepared to cover the stairs to the second floor once the infantry moves in and occupies the building. Claymore mines have been hung under the eaves of those buildings that had overhanging eaves. Doorways are booby-trapped to kill anyone that attempts to enter after the boys have gone in. Holes have been prepared through the exterior walls to shoot through," Mulford pointed out. "That's important. Those windows will attract enemy fire," Corey noted. Corey had taught defense in built-up areas, while an instructor at the infantry school. He also taught those classes to each of his junior officers. Captain Mulford continued. "Additional ammo was stockpiled in each building designated a prime position. Field wire has been run between buildings, so radio traffic would be minimal, and field phones would be used in case the enemy was to use electronic jammers," he said. "Good point. We haven't had any reported in use, but we don't want to be caught flat-footed. I see that you have the main highway blocked with concrete barriers and a ditch being dug just in front of them with the spoil behind them," Corey observed. "Yes, sir. That way they can't push the spoil into the ditch as well as the barriers and refill it. It's going to be difficult to get to the spoil to fill the ditch back in. I also have several dragon positions overwatching that barrier," Captain Mulford proudly stated. He and Corey had a strained relationship up to this point, and any brownie points he could score would be helpful at this point. Captain Mulford had gotten the company when Colonel Corey had had to relieve the previous company commander for inefficiency. To raise the spirits of the company, Captain Mulford did a few things that the boys liked, but that put Corey's ass in a sling with the division chief of staff. Not the kind of visibility a career officer wants. "Good. The main highway is blocked, and this should get the advancing enemy to attempt to bypass the town to the south," Corey said. "Good job, Mulf. Now don't blow it in the execution." Corey turned and climbed into his waiting vehicle. Driving across the open area south of the town, Corey checked his map for the location of the anti-tank company CP. "Lester, let's head for Delta Company CP," Corey directed. Specialist Bob Lester had been Corey's driver since being alerted to deploy to the desert. Lester was in his early 20s and was a quiet man from Michigan. His mom wrote to him often, but he never heard from his dad since his parents had divorced. To Corey, Lester was more than a driver. He was a companion and confidant, always there for Corey, taking care of anything the colonel needed. He was also someone Corey could vent to, and knew it would not be the next day's gossip. When they stopped at night, they slept where they stopped. And while Corey got a last call into the units, generally at 400 after walking a patrol with a junior officer, Lester would have his air mattress inflated and his sleeping bag laid out. After 2 hours of sleep, Corey would wake up to a hot cup of coffee, compliments of Lester. When Corey was sleeping, Lester would monitor the radios, and decide if a call was important enough to wake Corey. Lester didn't have to look at a map to know where Corey wanted to go. He had it memorized. "Yes, sir. They're up on that ridge over there." Lester turned the vehicle to head towards the CP location for the Delta Dogs. As they pulled up alongside Captain Nick Stein's vehicle, Stein jumped out of his vehicle with a shit-eating grin on his face. Stein had been commander of Delta Company for about a year. "Morning, sir," Stein said, but didn't bother to salute. Corey had put the word out. No saluting on the battlefield, as it made it too easy for a sniper to identify a leader and pick them off. "Nick, give me a rundown of your positions," Corey said as he laid his map out on the hood of the vehicle. Stein pulled out his map and laid it beside Corey's. "Sir, as you can see, I've laid out the range fan for each weapon system and have identified the dead space for each weapon." Stein's map indicated the location of each weapon, a fan for each weapon, and striped areas where the terrain created dead space within which the weapon could not engage a target. "Looks good," Corey complimented, studying Stein's map. As he did, Stein pulled a clear piece of acetate out of his map case. It was color-coded with green and red fans. "Here, sir, I've identified the overlapping fires of each weapon, and as you can see, every weapon position has a secondary weapon covering their sector of fire," Stein explained as he adjusted the overlay. Corey could see that each weapon system fan was covered by at least one other weapon. Removing the first overlay, Stein laid down and positioned a second overlay. These are each weapon system's alternate positions, and the fans, dead space, and supporting weapons systems coverage. As you can see, we have good coverage over the entire open area with multiple systems covering each other's area of responsibility. At both the primary and alternate position, we've stockpiled additional ammo, and each of the companies that we're co-located with has provided a squad with a vehicle to provide security and assist in the ammo reloads, Stein pointed out as he indicated each position. "You will note, sir, there are no TOWs with the Gators, as it would be a waste to put a system in the town," he concluded. "Yeah, I agree," Corey said as he continued to study Stein's maps. "Have you forwarded this to the TUC?" "Yes, sir, and Badger integrated it with his fire support plan," Stein said. "Good. I want to make sure that we aren't dropping artillery when you're firing and having the artillery cut your wires. When you engage, give us a minute to cut off the artillery or shift it so that doesn't happen," Corey directed. "Yes, sir. Badger and I talked about it, and when they hit the fast-cam field, he's going to put in he air bursts one time and then shift fire. When he shifts, we engage. Already worked it out with him," Stein explained. The family of scatterable mines, or fast-cam for short, was a series of both anti-tank and anti-personnel mines that were delivered by artillery or aircraft. The remote anti-armor mines, known as RAMs, and the area denial artillery munitions, or ADAM, were both delivered by the 155 howitzer. There was one system delivered by aircraft, the Gator mine system, and two systems delivered by various vehicles, the Volcano and GEMS mine systems. The MOPS, or Modular Pack mine system, was a manually emplaced mine dispenser that was remotely detonated and had 17 anti-tank mines and 4 anti-personnel mines. The mines had a lifespan of 4 hours to 15 days, depending on the system. So that's the reason for the shit-eating grin. Already worked it out without me. "Damn, you guys make my job easy. Sounds good. I'll catch you later," Corey said as he climbed back into his Humvee. He spent the rest of the day visiting each company commander and going over each plan, ensuring that each defensive position could accomplish their portion of the battalion plan. When he was satisfied, he told Lester to head for the TOC for a cup of coffee. It would be a long night, and not much sleep for a little while. Chapter 25. Showtime. Morning hours. 22nd October 1990. Battle Force Engagement Area. Al Murabba, Saudi Arabia. Once the brigade battle plan was developed, the battalions positioned, and assets allocated, the combat role for the brigade was one of monitoring the battle, conducting deep battle, and being prepared to reallocate assets and move units as required. Colonel, Battle Force has identified a battalion approaching his positions with an unidentified follow-on force. Because of the dust from the lead element, he can't determine what's coming behind the first, but he suspects it's probably 2 more battalions. All right, let's get some TAC air. With the attack helicopters all over to the east, we're going to be hard-pressed. Do we still have that little bird playing FO for us? Colonel Hall asked. Yes, sir, responded his S3, Major Clausen. Battle Force has already called for close air support to hit the follow-on forces. Good. Pass this information on to the FO and see if he can identify and locate the follow-on force. If he can, have him hit them with the MLRS battery when they're in range, and keep hitting them. Put TAC air on them as soon as it shows up. God, I wish we had some attack helicopters, Hall fumed. Battle Force 6, Scout 6, over. Scout 6, Battle Force 3, go ahead, Major Billy Wells answered. He was the battalion operations officer. Roger, sitrep. I'm showing a BTR battalion passing through Sulayla, Juhayna. Rate of movement is 10 kilometers. Break. I count 5-7 vehicles. Break. Second element is 5 kilometers behind, but with the dust, I cannot determine the size. Over. Roger. Good copy on all. What are your intentions? Over. Oh, we're just going to hunker down and continue to watch. Over. Lieutenant Al Stahl had been scout platoon leader for only a couple of months, as the battalion had shifted officers in the early summer, due to some departing the battalion for schools and some new officers coming into the battalion. Although he was new to the job, Al was absolutely the right person for it. At 16, he had become a guide for duck hunters on the Mississippi Flyway. In hunting season, his freezer was always stocked with game supplied by him or his very capable hunting partner, his wife. There wasn't much about stalking that Al didn't know, and he brought those skills with him to the job. He was also prior service enlisted and a fine leader. Roger, be safe. Over, Major Wells said, handing the hand mic to the battalion radio telephone operator, or RTO, Specialist Mankin. Specialist King manned the radio that connected the battalion to brigade. King, notify brigade that we have eyes on what appears to be an enemy BTR battalion with follow-on elements of unknown size. Pass along the location as well, Colonel Corey directed as he sat in the jump talk, overlooking Al-Muraba'a. The jump talk, or TAC CP, consisted of few people, mainly the commander, the operations officer, the 2 RTOs, and 2 drivers along with the fire support coordinator. The main talk was located across the valley on the south side and was manned by Major David, the battalion executive officer, along with the rest of the TOC staff, consisting of assistant operations officers, intel officers, communications officers, and NCOs. Turning to the fire support officer, Colonel Corey directed, Badger, let's lay in the FASCAM now. Roger, sir, Badger responded. Badger was Captain Harrison, but Colonel Corey had nicknames for each of his battle captains. His own was the Old Man, a nickname Corey wore with pride as he was the oldest person serving in the battalion at the age of 44. His gray hair only added to the nickname. Of course, no one ever referred to him by that name in his presence except by accident, and Corey would usually just chuckle. Captain Avery, let's get some TAC air out in front to wear them boys down, Corey said, addressing the TACP team chief that was with him. Roger, sir. I believe we have a flight of A-10s just waiting for a target. Do you want them on this first bunch or the follow-on? Hit the follow-on. We may be low on ammo and firepower once we take out this first bunch. I'd rather hit the second group if they can see them through the dust. Corey explained. Captain Avery got on the radio and started submitting their TAC air request ASAP. There wasn't a mission more desired by a ground attack pilot than a column or 2 of enemy vehicles waiting to get shot up. Colonel Corey took the hand mic from Monken. All Battle Force elements, Scout 6 has enemy battalion with BTR vicinity Sulaila Juhayna. Break. Anticipate your engagement area in 1 hour. Break. Do not engage until enemy is hit by the FASCAM. Acknowledge. Roger, Gator 6, the A Company commander, Captain Mulford, said. Bulldog 6, Roger. Captain Grubich, the Bravo commander, acknowledged. Charger 6, Roger. The Charlie Company commander, Captain Agather, replied. Dog 6, Roger. Captain Stein acknowledged. Dog Company, with its 20 Tau weapons, was the principal anti-tank weapon for the Air Assault Infantry Battalion. The line companies had the Dragon weapons system, but the Tau, with its 3,000-meter range, was the relied-upon weapon against tanks. The Tau vehicles were arrayed in the hills overlooking Al-Murabba, with 1/3 on the south side, 1/3 to the west of the town, and 1/3 north of the town. Delta Company also had 3 strong officers. The company commander was one of the best in the brigade. In addition, he had a captain as a platoon leader who had transferred out of the battalion to attend the Special Forces course, but dropped out and returned to the battalion, taking any job Colonel Corey would give him just because he wanted to go into combat with the battalion. An anti-tank platoon was all that was left and needed to be filled. The young captain took it. In addition, the company executive officer was a positive influence and could easily take command if necessary. Corey watched as the BTRs moved down the valley towards Al-Murabba. Company A was in the town, and Corey hoped they didn't give away their positions until the enemy hit the minefield. Bravo Company was located on the south side of the valley, 1,200 meters from the edge of town. Charlie Company was to the west of town, closing the western end of the minefield. Wherever the enemy vehicles moved, they would be within range of both the Taus and Dragon weapons systems. The sound of the flight of 4 A-10 aircraft passing over his head at low-level altitude grabbed Corey's attention. They were just above the hilltops and driving right for the enemy formation, but bypassing the first elements. When they began unleashing their ordnance, Corey could hear the explosions but couldn't observe the damage they were inflicting. Captain Avery, ask them for a BDA if they can give us one when they're expended, Corey asked the Air Force captain. Avery was an F-16 pilot, but had to pull a tour in the world of tactical air control party. He would much rather be flying in the conflict, but accepted his role, and did it well. Sir, I don't have comms with those birds. Brigade called up that airstrike. They must have some eyes on the follow-on force, Captain Avery indicated. I'll call the TACP at Brigade and see what they can tell me. Corey and his S3, Major Wells, were positioned to observe the engagement area and the entire defense plan from their hilltop position. As they watched, the first of the enemy's vehicles appeared. Battle Force 6, Gator 6, over. Gator 6, Battle Force 6, go ahead. Battle Force 6, enemy reconnaissance element is a click east of our position and observing. It appears he's trying to decide which way to go. Over. Shifting his binoculars, Corey could now see the reconnaissance element. 3 individuals were in front of a BTR-60 and looking at a map. It appeared that there was a disagreement on which way to advance. Come on, this is a no-brainer. Bypass the town. Don't be stupid, Corey was thinking as he watched the reconnaissance team discuss the way to go. Battle Force 6, Scout 6, over. Scout 6, Battle Force 3, go ahead, Major Wells said. Major Wells had been the battalion S3, or operations officer, for only a month when the battalion had been alerted to deploy. In that short time, he and Corey had established a good working relationship, but with some frustration for Major Wells. At times, he and Corey had a difference of opinion on tactics, which is not uncommon between infantry officers depending on background. Wells knew if he made a compelling enough argument, Corey would come around to his plan, but it took a convincing argument. Battle Force 3, battalion-size element passing through Sulaila Juhayna with 53 vehicles, 4 ZSU-23-4, 4 SA-9s. No tanks, no artillery. How copy? Over. Scout 6, good copy. Do you have eyes on follow-on force? Over. Battle Force 3, that's a negative. We do hear a lot of explosions and noise, but they're covered in dust at this point. I estimate they're 3 clicks back. Over. Scout 6, roger. Keep us informed. Battle Force 3, out. Wells turned to Corey. Sir, did you get that? He asked, as Corey was still watching the recon element. Turning to face Wells, Corey said, Yeah, and that's not going to give us much time to take out this first bunch and reposition. I hope Brigade can slow them down a bit or we're going to have our hands full. Call the XO and have him ask Brigade if we can get some priority on TAC Air when the second element gets to us. Will do, sir, Wells said, and reached for the battalion radio. Corey returned to watching the recon element. After a few more minutes, he noticed something. They're mounting up. Looks like they've made a decision, Corey said, still glued to his binos. Hot damn, they're going to bypass the town. Battle Force 6, Gator 6, over. Gator 6, I see the recon element is bypassing your position. Over. Roger, they're moving south and skirting the town. I intend to hold all fires and let them pass. Over. Gator 6, that's exactly what we want. Break, break. Charlie Rock 6, Charlie Rock 6, Battle Force 6, over. Battle Force 6, Charlie Rock 6, over. Charlie Rock was commanded by Captain Agather, nicknamed Flex. Flex was as skinny as they come, and the nickname was a play on him flexing his muscles. He was a physically fit officer, but just didn't have the muscle definition that would indicate such. Charlie Rock 6, you have a reconnaissance element of 10 vehicles approaching your positions. As we discussed, let them pass through and then take them out with your ambush. How copy? Battle Force 6, good copy. All is ready. Corey knew that Flex would have everything ready and carry out the mission as they had discussed. He returned to watching the reconnaissance element move south of the town and head due south towards Flex's position. Looking north, Corey could see the dust cloud approaching as the first enemy battalion moved forward. Badger, lay in the FASCM, Corey directed the fire support officer. Roger, sir. All Battle Force elements, Battle Force 3, FASCAM is going in, Major Wells informed everyone. Each acknowledged that they understood. The valley floor was now covered in mines and tripwires. The combination of Adam and Rames created an instant obstacle. Each company also had MOPMs, but had not activated them except in Company A's sector. Corey continued to watch the forward progress of the enemy battalion and the forward progress of the reconnaissance element. It was just reaching the forward positions of Charlie Rock, and Corey was holding his breath that it would pass through without detecting Charlie Rock. Battle Force 6, Charlie Rock 6, Flex said in almost a whisper. Charlie Rock 6, go ahead. Recon element is through my position. Ambush is ready in 2 clicks. Roger, let me know when it hits. Over. Roger, Charlie Rock 6 out. Turning to Major Wells, Corey said, Flex says the recon element passed through his positions, and it appears they didn't see him. His ambush is 2 clicks down the road. He'll let us know, then they spring it. Well, sir, it appears that things are about to get lively. The lead elements of the battalion are about to run into the minefield, Wells pointed out, and Corey redirected his attention. In the open valley, they watched as the Iraqi battalion was in an anticipated formation of 2 companies abreast, with a 3rd company following. Air defense weapons were seen on the flanks for the ZSU-23-4 and the SA-9's array across the middle of the formation. As the first vehicle entered the minefield, all hell broke loose. The first vehicle, a BTR-60, hit an anti-tank mine, designed to destroy a much larger and heavier vehicle. The BTR-60 set off the mine, which tore the BTR-60 into 3 large pieces and scattered the remains of those inside some distance away. Some landed and set off anti-personnel mines, which just added to the confusion. Almost immediately, Badger squeezed the mic switch, and the command for the artillery battery to open fire was given. Moments later, airbursts could be seen over the enemy battalion, stripping off antennas and anyone outside the vehicles. As prearranged, the TOWs, all 20, immediately opened fire at ranges varying from 1,500 to 3,000 meters. The longer ranges required 10 seconds to reach the target, but when one is buttoned up inside a vehicle with limited exterior views, finding a hide position quickly isn't always possible. Of the first 20 TOWs fired, 16 found and destroyed targets. One was the Iraqi battalion commander's vehicle, as TOW gunners always looked for the leader's vehicles. In addition, 3 of the ZSU-23-4 were destroyed by 2 Dragon missiles and 1 by 1 of the 4 Vulcan 23mm anti-aircraft guns located with Corey's battalion. The second round of TOW missiles focused on the remaining BTR-60s, which were now seriously bogged down in the FASCAM minefield, or being engaged by Dragons from soldiers located in the Gator sector. After 15 minutes, Corey called Hall. Bastogne 6, Battle Force 6, over. Battle Force 6, Bastogne 6, go ahead. Roger, engaged 1 Iraqi battalion. Destroyed 52 BTR-60, 4 ZSU-23-4, and 4 SA-9. How copy? Good copy. Be advised you have a second force approaching your position. Roger, understood. Battle Force 6, out. Corey turned to Major Wells. Billy, notify everyone that there's a full following brigade coming at us. Rearm, move casualties, and be prepared for incoming. Have them report status of 3, V, water, and casualties. I got a feeling this next one won't be so easy, he said with a resigned voice. The lack of sleep was catching up to him. Colonel Hall, sir, the follow-on force heading for Battle Force has turned. The scout is reporting they held short of Sulayla Juhayna and then turned towards Salaila Aneza and are heading southeast towards 3rd Brigade, Major Clausen said. Hall quickly grabbed up the map and looked to where 3rd Brigade was defending. The 3rd Brigade, 187th Infantry Regiment, was on the 1st Brigade's right flank. The bulk of his force was on a defensive line from the east side of the ridge, south of Al-Murabba, to just east of Jeddah. The terrain would channel an advancing division onto a very narrow front approaching Jeddah. Excuse me, sir, Major Clausen said, but Division just notified us that priority of air support now is with 3rd Brigade as well as long-range fires. That leaves us with our DS-105 battalion, and that's about it. Well, we're just going to have to make do. It appears that most of the Iraqis are moving southeast and not coming into our sector. What's the status of Battle Force? Sir, I spoke with Battle Force 6. They're good. A few light casualties, but nothing that needs immediate evac. And no slack in Bastogne? Hall asked. Sir, they never really got into it as they were bypassed. This Iraqi division appears hell-bent on getting into it with 3rd Brigade. Yeah, but there's another division somewhere north that should be following this division. Get division on the horn and see what they have intel-wise and what they're thinking about our next move. The Iraqis aren't coming this way, and there's no point in us just sitting here, Hall instructed Major Clausen. Chapter 26. Battle in the Desert. Midday, 22nd October 1990, 187th Infantry Regiment, Rakkasans. General Rashid Hamdani, commander of the 12th Regiment, 7th Iraqi Division, did not like sacrificing his men. He knew when he committed the 1st Battalion that he was doing just that as they moved down the highway and wadi from Al-Dalia towards Shajwa. His regiment was the right flank of the division. The 13th Regiment was the left flank and had reported some enemy engagements. The black smoke columns indicated more than just some engagements. The 12th and 13th Regiments were to draw the enemy out and hold the shoulders of the penetration with 14th Regiment, pushing through the enemy's defense so the 37th Division could exploit the attack and break through to Jeddah and Yanbu. The enemy on the flanks was just light infantry, he was told, but they were proving to be a stubborn and resilient enemy. He had lost all contact with the 1st Battalion. Picking up the hand microphone, he called his 2nd Battalion commander. 2-6, this is 1-2-6, over. 1-2-6, this is 2-6, over. 2-6, you are to assume the right flank and probe along those hillsides. There should be more of this American unit hiding. I think we have lost 1-6. We must clean the Americans out of those hills, Hamdani said. 1-2-6, understood. We have had negative contact since we passed Silila Aneza. My lead element is moving towards Tara'a, 2-6 reported. Roger, let me know when you reach there. 1-2-6 out, Hamdani responded. He did not like sending battalions off on scouting missions. That was not how they were trained to fight. We fight as a regiment, and not a piecemeal commitment, he was thinking when the radio began crackling. 1-2-6, 2-6 over. 2-6's voice was elevated. 2-6, 1-2-6 over. 1-2-6, my lead element has been hit hard. We cannot get past this position and have dismounted but are meeting stiff opposition. Request assistance. In the background, Hamdani could hear the sound of machine gun fire and explosions, very loud explosions. I am not going to have my regiment destroyed in a piecemeal fashion, Hamdani said to himself. 2-6, what is the location of your lead element? 2-6 gave him the coordinates, which he plotted on his map. They were held up at the first choke point on the road leading to Tara'a. Hamdani noted that a bit south of the entrance to the wadi going to Tara'a was another wadi that could bring a force south of the choke point and into the rear of the ambush site. 3-6, 1-2-6, over. He was calling the 3rd Battalion commander. 1-2-6, 3-6, over. 3-6, move one wadi south of the wadi to Tara'a and take it. You will come back to the road that 2-6 is on and behind the ambush site. Understood? Hamdani passed the coordinates of the ambush site to the 3rd Battalion commander. 1-2-6, understood. 3rd Battalion continued south before turning west to come behind the ambush site that had been decimating the 2nd Battalion. Now the 12th Regiment was fully committed. "Son of a bitch, that hurts!" Private Billy Jones yelled when a bullet grazed his upper arm as he started to raise his Dragon anti-tank launcher. "Hold still and let me see it," Specialist Williams said, grabbing his first aid bandage. "Screw that. Keep shooting. I'll be okay. Now I'm going to kill something. I'm pissed," Jones said, readjusting his Dragon and looking through the thermal sight. As he scanned quickly for a target, he saw a BTR-80 six-wheel vehicle with a whip antenna and a flag flying from the antenna. The vehicle appeared to be stopped, with other vehicles on the other side doing the same thing. "You're mine," Jones was thinking as he adjusted his sight and fired. The exploding round leaped from the launcher and commenced what appeared to be an erratic flight towards its target. To those watching the flight of the round, it appeared that it was going everywhere and nowhere, as it was designed to fly with small thrusters, keeping the round inside a box that appeared in the sight. From Jones's perspective, the round was functioning perfectly as it zeroed in on the BTR-80. B.G. Baghdadi, commander of the 13th Regiment, was intensely listening to his radios and reports from his subordinate commanders. He was serving on the left flank of the 7th Division, and his mission was to find and fix the American positions and hold the shoulders to allow follow-on forces to penetrate the American defense. However, nothing was happening according to plan or going right, in his opinion. The American Tau and Dragon weapons were decimating his vehicles. Around him, the sounds of explosions from incoming artillery could be heard, as well as an occasional bullet bouncing off the side of the armored vehicle. He was thankful the Americans did not appear to have any heavy machine guns, such as the .50 caliber, that had been in the American arsenal since 1918. He was a bit miffed that he couldn't get some close air support or attack helicopters, as the division commander was saving them to support the penetration by the 4th Regiment. Well, he'd better damn well commit the 4th now, was the last thought he had, as the Dragon missile slammed into the side of the vehicle, causing it to explode. The 3rd Regiment was now leaderless, and confusion quickly set in. "Damn, Billy, you nailed his ass." "Good shooting," Specialist Williams congratulated his foxhole mate. Billy didn't have time to celebrate, but discarded the spent launcher, grabbed another launcher and attached the thermal sight, ready for the next vehicle that came within range. Picking up his M16 rifle, he engaged individual targets who had already dismounted and were attempting to move up the hills to overrun his and Williams's position and the rest of the 1st Platoon, Company B, 1st Battalion, 187th Infantry Regiment. The platoon's position was laid out, so each fighting position had interlocking fire with the positions on each side. The platoon leader and platoon sergeant had designated the location of each position and had marked each position on the ground with orange spray paint before the soldiers had moved into the area. They'd then had 2 days to prepare their positions before the platoon, leader and platoon sergeant had come and inspected the positions and questioned the occupants on sectors of fire, dead space, and engagement areas. When they were satisfied, they moved on to the next position. The 2 days of preparing the positions were now paying off as the enemy was dying, attempting to move up the hill to reach them. "Bastogne 6, Eagle 6, MG Peters called. "Eagle 6, Bastogne 6, go ahead," Colonel Hall, the 1st Brigade commander, responded. "Bastogne 6, Sitrep," MG Peters requested. "Eagle 6, no slack, is in heavy contact at this time. Battle force appears to be quiet now with 80% availability and 50% ammo status. He has requested an ammo resupply. Bulldog 6 reports no activity in his sector as he was totally bypassed. How copy?" "Bastogne 6, good copy. Move Bulldog to PZ posture. He's to be attached to Rakissan 6 to reinforce. Birds will be there in 30 mics to commence extraction. How copy?" Peters asked. Hall didn't like giving up one of his battalions, but understood. The Rakissans were becoming the main effort, as they now had 2 regiments coming at him, one holding the shoulders of the penetration, and the other preparing to punch through and roll on to Yanbu. "Eagle 6, I have good copy. We'll send PZ locations in 1 mic." "Over," Hall replied, while Major Clausen was reaching for the brigade command radio to alert 1st Battalion of their upcoming move. Having notified 1st Battalion, Clausen turned to Hall. "Sir, I hope Division understands that if the follow-on division comes this way, there's nothing to stop him." "Yes, and I guess the CG is willing to accept the risk. That's why he makes the big money." 20 minutes later, Bulldog 6 was back on the radio. "Bastogne 6, Bulldog 6. "Go ahead, Bulldog," Hall responded. "Bastogne 6, Bulldog is moving to PZ postures. We plan on taking all the infantry out first, then the Tau systems, Vulcans, and any vehicles we can on the big birds. They're being prepared for sling loads," Bastogne 6 stated. "Roger, have you been in contact with Rakissan 6? Hall asked. "Negative, Bastogne 6. We'll contact him for you and alert him to your arrival. Good luck, and keep the boys healthy." "Roger, Bastogne 6. Bulldog 6 out." An hour later, Rakissan 6 received a call. Rakissan 6 was Colonel Bob Clark, who had previously commanded Battle Force before being sent to the U.S. Army War College and promoted to full colonel. He was very familiar with standard operating procedures in the division. "Rakissan 6, Bulldog 6, over." Bulldog 6 had never worked with the Rakissans before, but the division operated with an SOP, which made things much simpler. "Bulldog 6, Rakissan 6, go ahead." "Rakissan 6, my first elements are on the ground and moving into position. Taus and vehicles will be on the first lift of heavies. Understand you want me to establish a defense in depth behind leader Rakissan. Is that correct?" Bulldog 6 asked, seeking confirmation on the frago he'd received before departing his previous location. Bulldog 6, that is affirmative. They'll hit Leader Rakissan in about 1 hour. He'll delay them for as long as possible, but will gradually allow some to get through his position for you to hit. We cannot allow them to get through you, understood? How copy? Rakissan 6 asked. Roger, Rakissan 6. We'll be ready, Bulldog 6 replied. Rakissan 6 out. And with that, Bulldog 6 commenced to discuss his plan with the Battalion S3. They had received the mission days ago as a be prepared mission, so everyone in the battalion had an idea of where they were going and what they were going to have to do. The wadi was 6,000 meters wide and about 17,000 meters long from the rear of Leader Rakissan's positions. Vehicles moving down the wadi would be out of tow range if they stayed right in the middle, but single-file hey-diddle-diddle up the middle was not how the regiments attacked. They would be spread out, easily within range of tow weapons. At the southern end, the wadi came to a choke point that was only 2,000 meters wide. This was where the bulk of the dragon weapons would be located. Bulldog 6 also planned to emplace an air-dropped minefield there as well, using Air Force CBU-89 Gator munitions. Bulldog 6's plan was to initially position 7 ambush sites for his vehicle-mounted TOWs along the sides of the wadi forward of the choke point. Positions would engage and fall back past other tow position to take up a new position around the choke point, a technique called bounding overwatch. The superior speed of the tow vehicles and the range of the tow missile would make it possible to quickly move out of the range of the main gun on the T-72 tanks or the machine gun from the BTR-80. In addition, 7 more ambush sites were planned along the eastern side of the wadi, hiding in the edge of the wadi along the steep ridge line from the choke point to the final defensive positions. What troubles me about these positions around the choke point is he's going to see this, and should be smart enough to know we're going to be there. He'll use his artillery or TAC air and attack helicopters to hit us hard. We've got to be sure to get overhead cover on the troops, Bulldog 6 discussed with Bulldog 3. Sir, we don't have much time once we get the troops on the ground and really nothing to use for overhead cover, the S3 pointed out. Well, let's be sure the company commanders understand the foxholes have got to be deep and commence work as soon as they're on the ground, Bulldog 6 said, mumbling to himself. Wish we had the damn attack helicopters working with us. Chapter 27. Scud hunting. 22 October 1990. ODA 5226, United Arab Emirates. Did you hear that? Lieutenant Harris asked Sergeant First Class Weekly, cocking his head slightly. Yeah, Weekly said in a whisper. Sounded like it was down in the port area. Hell of an explosion. Don't think it was an airstrike. Harris and his Special Forces team had been looking for 3 Scud launchers for the past 13 days. After that initial Scud attack, finding any remaining launchers had moved to the top of the priority list, so much so that an unplanned resupply of food and water was made. The first night they were inserted, they climbed to the top of a dominant ridgeline, from where they could observe the approach to the wadi from Sakarport area. Only an occasional civilian vehicle was seen. It became obvious to Weekly and Harris that they were going to have to conduct a search of the wadis that branched off the main wadi. Guys, we may have missed some launchers being moved into positions, so we're going to have to start searching, he informed the team. No one complained. They all took the information like the professionals they were. I'll take Justin with me, and Mr. Garrett will take Cardwell with him. Weekly and Donovan will stay here and maintain contact with us and higher. Any questions? There were none, as everyone had expected this after the first day when they saw no traffic. After everyone had their respective gear and the sun had just set for the evening, Harris directed, "Okay, let's move out." As the 2 teams moved down the hillside, the descent was much easier than the climb, and both teams made good time reaching the bottom of the wadi. It had been decided that Harris and Justin would search the wadi they had parachuted into first. Mr. Garrett and Cardwell were heading northwest up that wadi. Both wadis could be observed from Weekly's position, except the last couple of 100 meters in each. Weekly's high position allowed for good communications with both teams. "Hey, Donovan, you got good comms with Higher Still?" Weekly asked once the teams had departed. "Yeah. This elevation and clear sky are giving us good comms for a change. I think a relay was established across the border to monitor all of us," Donovan replied. 4 Special Forces teams had been inserted along the border to find these launchers. To maintain contact besides satellite communications, monitoring sites had been established on the Oman side of the border. Each site was monitoring the communications with 2 teams. Co-located at each monitoring site were 2 MH-60 helicopters from the Special Operations Aviation Regiment, TF-160. If a team got into trouble and needed to be extracted quickly, these aircraft were there to do just that. "You think? Didn't you listen to the brief? You were told there would be, and the extraction aircraft would be co-located with the monitoring station, or did you sleep through that part of the brief?" Weekly jokingly asked. "No, I had to take a dump and left for about 10 minutes. They must have covered that when I was in the John. Did I miss anything else that was important?" Donovan asked. "I'll let you know when the shit hits the fan and you start asking questions. Until then, why don't you get some sleep and I'll take the first watch. 4 hours and I'll wake you at midnight. Sound good?" Weekly suggested. "Yeah, I can handle that. Wake me at midnight and be sure there's a cup of coffee in your hand for me," Donovan said, yawning as he wrapped his poncho liner and shelter half around his body. His comment was not disrespectful to Weekly's superior rank, but said with the familiarity reserved for comrades in this very professional organization. Looking over the terrain on this clear sky night, Weekly was simply amazed at the number of stars in the heavens. From where he sat on the prominent ridge, away from any artificial light, he had 1,000,000 twinkling lights above his head. He reached over to his kit, withdrew his PVS-7 night vision goggles, and powered them up, looking skyward. The 1,000,000 points of light became 2,000,000 as he could now see stars that were too faint for the naked eye. "My God, we really are insignificant in this universe. Which one of you has life on it? Because we can't be the only ones out here," he thought. His concentration on the stars was only broken by the faint sound of the radio. "Base, Team 1, over." Without removing his NVGs, Weekly picked up the hand mic. He noted no panic or shooting in the background of the call. "Team 1, base, go ahead." "Base, Teams 1 and 2 have reached Point Alpha. Separating at this time, over." "Roger, Team 1. Have good copy. Base out." Weekly laid the hand mic down and recorded in his notebook that the teams had reached the bottom of the ridge and were separating to investigate their respective wadis. Transmissions were kept short so that a fix could not be made on the location of the transmitters. "God be with you guys," he thought as he returned to observing the stars. Mr. Garrett and Cardwell moved off to the north, skirting the west and north side of the pond. It was a man-made pond created by a dam across the mouth of the wadi and runoff from the surrounding mountains. Garrett stopped for a moment and took a knee. Reaching down, he cupped one hand, dipped it into the water, and took a sip. "How's it taste?" Cardwell asked. "Like water," was Garrett's response. "I think it's good. We might fill up when we return, and then boil it when we get back just to make sure. The last thing anyone wanted was to have diarrhea caused by drinking bad water, or something worse like hepatitis, even though they all had their shots up to date." As they moved around the north side of the pond, they came across a pumping station and deduced that it must be supplying fresh water to the villages further down in the wadi, or maybe even Sakhr itself. The terrain was very restrictive on the north side of the pond, which forced the team to stay off the ridge. This escarpment rose 1,000 feet above the floor of the wadi and was impossible for them to climb. As they approached the wadi, a cluster of agricultural fields and buildings were to their immediate right. They had decided after doing a map reconnaissance earlier, and now confirming what the map had shown them, that it would be better to cross the wadi and move up on the opposite side. The terrain sloped upward gradually on that side, and the area they wanted to see was on that side as well. This would give them an easier walk and allow them to avoid most of the locals. It also offered hide positions where they could hunker down for the day, as they were sure they couldn't do an adequate reconnaissance and return to Weekly's position in one night. However, Garrett decided to change the plan slightly. With this compound being so big, it offers a lot more concealment than if we cross right here. What do you think if we move north along the base of the escarpment for about 500 meters and then cut over? We would only be exposed for about a click in crossing instead of a click and a half, Garrett said. Es ist mir egal, but let's just get a move on, Cardwell said, practicing his German. He did not like being exposed in the open. They started moving past the compound with it on their left and the escarpment on their right. They didn't want to move too high on the slope, as this might cause loose rocks to roll downhill and alert those in the compound. However, as they were on the far side of the compound and starting to breathe a bit easier, a dog started barking. The compound was enclosed in a chain-link fence, so the dog couldn't get out, but it was barking enough to wake the dead. And it did. Someone came out with a flashlight and was shining it through the fence in the direction that the dog was facing, right at Garrett and Cardwell. Both had taken a prone position and pressed themselves into the dirt as best they could before the flashlight panned across them. After a minute of panning, the flashlight went out and something was said angrily in Arabic. The dog yelped. It did not return to its barking. "Let's move," Garrett said in a whisper, and slowly raised to a low crouch and began moving again to the north. The further they got from the compound, the taller they stood, and the more they picked up the pace. There was minimal talking, but constant head-turning as they continued to scan for the elusive launchers. Wearing their PVS-7 night vision goggles certainly helped in seeing any potential problems early. After moving 500 meters, Garrett motioned for them to take a break, and both immediately went to their knee. A drink of water was in order, as they had soaked their uniforms with sweat. Even late at night, the desert temperature was hovering in the 90s. Garrett pulled out his map and scanned it, noting their current location, the direction to move to cross the wadi, and the distance across at this point. Turning to Cardwell, he held out his map and pointed. "Here's where we are, and it's a click across the wadi. We have to cross the road, and it's pretty open around it. Once we get to the far side, there's some brush along the wadi that'll give us some concealment. We'll have a bit of a downhill walk to the road, then a level walk to the far side." "Looks good to me. I'm ready when you are," Cardwell said, adjusting his backpack, which contained the radio. "Okay, let's go." And with that, Garrett stood and moved out on a heading of 300 degrees. His pace had not changed, as this was a walk and not a race. The road was only 150 meters away, and an easy walk. As they approached, they realized that the road was slightly elevated. More concerning were the headlights approaching from the south and the direction of Sacre Port. "Get across and hide," was all Garrett had to say. They half ran and half walked across the road and dropped down 10 feet. The side of the road had a steep drop to the wadi, where it appeared that water in the rainy season had washed the side out. When they landed, they stayed lying up against the embankment. The vehicle continued to approach, with no noticeable change in the engine noise as it sped past their position. They both noted that this was no light civilian truck, but a heavy truck, maybe a 5-ton or bigger. "I wonder where he's going," Cardwell said, peeking out to the side to see if he could follow the truck. As he watched, it entered the town, and then he lost sight of it. "Maybe when we get across and start going up the hill, we can spot it. Let's get going," Garrett said, adjusting his rucksack and continuing his march. It took them an hour to cross the rocky wadi, as hurrying across it would mean risking a twisted, or worse, broken ankle. Once they reached the far side, they changed course to due west. The spot they couldn't see from Weekly's position lay one click due west and up a gradual slope, although the final location was set in a draw about 500 feet below the crest they were climbing. It would be another 2 hours of hiking and climbing to position them in a location to observe at about 0400 hours. They moved out in silence. Finding a hide position, Garrett and Cardwell dropped their rucksacks and camouflaged their position. It was in a small draw, and with the use of their camouflage rucksack covers, they appeared to be just more rocks, or at least they hoped they did, as it was still dark. Without the rucksacks, they could move faster and headed off the last 200 meters to look over the escarpment and down into the valley. As they approached, they picked up a faint sound. "Do you hear an engine running?" Garrett asked. "No, I hear a generator running. 10K from the sound of it. Big," Cardwell said. They continued forward, and the sound grew louder. "That is definitely a generator," Cardwell said in a low voice. When they were 10 feet from the edge of the escarpment, they went into low-crawl mode and slithered up to the edge to look over. There, 500 feet below them, sat a large tent with a large generator next to it. An electrical cable ran from the generator out 100 feet to another tent that appeared to be well lit inside. "What the hell is this setup?" Garrett whispered as he looked down on the scene below. Cardwell tapped his shoulder and pointed. Garrett followed his arm and gazed to where it was pointed. He saw nothing but rocks until someone moved. The Scud launcher was backing into a large camouflaged cover over what appeared to be a shallow hole that allowed the vehicle to back in and out. Once inside, under the camouflage, the launcher was below ground level. "No wonder they couldn't find it in an aerial recon. Sneaky little bastards they are," Cardwell said. "Well, let's get some photos and the location and ease back. We'll call it in when we get to the hide position," Garrett said, pushing himself back from the edge. Lieutenant Harris and Sergeant Lovett moved up the wadi they had parachuted into the night before. There was a small compound on the south side as one entered the wadi, so they elected to move on the northern side to avoid any locals or dogs. They hugged the base of the escarpment that created the north wall of the wadi until they approached another compound. "Damn, another compound. Let's cross over to the other side and avoid this," Harris said, and took off at a low crouch, jogging across the wadi to the south wall. It was only 200 meters across and flat, so the crossing was made with little difficulty. They moved further into the wadi, another 500 meters of which the last 200 was actually behind a small rise that provided some concealment from the compound on the north side. Coming out from behind the rise, Harris raised his hand for Lovett to stop and dropped to his stomach. Lovett crawled up beside him. "What you got, Lieutenant?" Lovett asked. Pointing to his front, Harris asked, "What does that look like to you?" "Sir, that looks like either a well drill under camouflage or a Scud launcher, and I don't think a well drill would have tents and generators around it," Lovett said. As they lay there, both scanned the area with their night vision goggles. "Hey, Lieutenant, look to your 10 o'clock and about 300 meters. What does that look like?" Lovett pointed out. "Shit, that's another Scud," Harris replied. "Okay, let's plot these positions and get out of here. We need to call this in before they move them." 5 minutes later, they were on their feet and heading back to link up with Weekly. Reaching the top of the ridge just as the sky was turning pink in the east, Harris, soaked with perspiration, walked into Weekly's position. Earlier, he had called Weekly and provided the information on the 2 Scuds they had found. "Did you get through to hire and report the locations?" Harris asked as he dropped his rucksack and stretched his back. "Humping that damn rucksack is going to make an old man out of me one day," he thought. Handing a cup of coffee to Harris, Weekly said, "Yeah, we got the position of all 3 reported to higher. I suspect we're going to see some action around here sometime this morning." 3? I only sent you 2, Harris replied with a questioning look. "Mr. Garrett located one last night as well," Weekly replied with a smile. "Is he coming back in this morning?" Harris asked, sipping his coffee. "No, they hunkered down for the day and will come in tonight after the sun drops. I told Higher we would need an extraction, and they were standing by to send us a bird." Harris absorbed this information for a moment. "I don't like it. If those launchers get hit today, the ragheads are going to know someone spotted them and will be looking for us." "Hey, Lieutenant, Garrett knows what he's doing. I'm sure he's in a good position for the day and set out early," Weekly assured him. "Did Higher say about what time the airstrikes would go in?" Harris questioned. "No, why?" Weekly asked, curious as to what the lieutenant was thinking. "Get them on the horn. Ask if they can schedule the airstrikes for just before sunset. In the confusion, Garrett will have a better chance of slipping away. Let's pick a PZ location that we all can move to for the extraction," Harris directed, and pulled out a map to begin plotting their extraction. As the sun approached the western horizon and the long shadows of the mountains brought an early evening to the wadis, 3 loud explosions could be heard as Maverick missiles slammed into the launchers, each with a missile erected. The sounds of the explosions reverberated off the walls of the canyons, making it sound as if several bombs had been dropped. The A-6E intruder aircraft had flown well under the electronic eye of radar, taking advantage of the canyons, and thus entered and exited the area without a shot being fired at them. 30 minutes later, the 2 teams were on the move to the pre-planned extraction point. Harris was not totally happy about the extraction point, but he wanted to make it easy for everyone to get to it. It was located halfway between the 2 teams and in the wadi along the main road coming into the area out of Sakhr. Harris explained to Weekly that if they had an extraction around 4 in the morning, it would still be dark, and the Iraqis might just be tuckered out, having spent the night looking for them in the area of the strikes. And so, having watched the strikes, the teams set out. Both had downhill routes to the extraction point. Garrett and Cardwell would have the more difficult and tiring hump, as they would be walking cross-slope and down. Harris and team had a long downhill run and then flat ground, negotiation around a compound. Garrett didn't have that problem on his route this time. At 0200, both teams had reached their respective edges of the wadi. Some vehicle traffic had been seen on the road moving to and from the Sakhr port area. They were 450 meters apart. "Team 2, Team 1, over," Harris called. "Team 1, Team 2, go ahead," Garrett responded as he pulled an IR chem stick out of a cargo pant pocket and cracked it. "Team 2, did you just start an IR chem stick?" Harris asked. "Roger, I believe I have you in sight as well." "Over," responded Garrett. "Okay, the road is right in front of us. We're going to cross and come to your location and get away from these compounds," Harris indicated. "Roger, we'll cover you," Garrett said. Turning to his team, Harris gave a hand signal that everyone could see since they all had on night vision goggles. They then immediately spread out, and with the next signal, they all rose and crossed the road at the same time. On the other side, they assumed a wedge formation and proceeded to link up with Garrett. Promptly at 0358, the sound of a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter could be heard, and at 400, a cloud of dust covered them, created by the Black Hawk landing next to them. The flight home was uneventful, just the way soldiers liked it. Mission complete. Chapter 28. Partial Mobilization Decision. 22 October 1990. Oval Office, White House, Washington, D.C. General Schwarzkopf was listening to the latest intelligence brief, and he did not like what he was hearing. "Sir, as we speak, the Iraqi 1st Republican Guard Corps is moving one division from the north coast to Fujairah on the south coast. With the strait closed, we believe they feel that an amphibious assault by the Marines is a major threat in this area. The hydrography of the beaches will support an amphibious landing, and Khor Fakkan Port, Al-Qwaraya Port, and Fujairah Port are the only ports that can support a major operation. Fujairah International Airport is also suitable for cargo jets. The beaches are 400 feet in depth from waterline to seawall, which is approximately 4 feet high, the briefing officer said. Damn! I was hoping we could put the 2nd Marine Division in there unopposed, but that just went out the window. We're going to need 2 divisions to open that door. I foresee 1 Marine Division conducting an amphibious assault across the beach, and another division moving north out of Boubacara, Oman, now to hit the Iraqi division in the flank. Can't send a Marine division across the beach alone against prepared positions and a dug-in Iraqi division, Schwarzkopf said, looking at the CENTCOM G3, General Schless, who nodded in acknowledgement that what had just been said would have to be included in his war plan. And I don't think we have the ships to support a full Marine division in a forced entry, do we? Sir, I will have to defer to Marsent to get an accurate estimate of what we could put into a forced entry, General Schless indicated. Is there any indication that Saddam is going to pull out? I really don't want to bring a lot of folks over and then have to turn around and send them home, Schwarzkopf asked the briefing officer and CENTCOM G2, B.G. O'Donnell. O'Donnell fielded the question. Sir, there are no indications that he's going to withdraw. In fact, all indications are that he's reinforcing. I'm sure the G3 will cover it in detail, but last night we took out 3 Scud sites in this area. He pointed at the map. Outside the port of Sakr, where the Florida took out that bulk carrier full of Scud missiles. No, sir. He's not pulling out but reinforcing. Sir, over in the west, 101st is in a major fight with the 2nd Iraqi Corps. It started this morning and is still raging. Artsent just sent the first reports up to us. The 101st is holding but just barely, General Schless said. Turning to Schless, General Schwarzkopf said, See me after this meeting and let's review the war plan. I think we're going to need more forces. Prior to going to General Schwarzkopf's office, General Schless stopped off in his office. Have you guys flushed out the plan? He asked, coming through the door. The old man wants to review it, now. Sir, we wrapped it up about 10 minutes ago based on the latest intel. We also have a proposal for additional forces to support the plan. There's just no way to do this without more, Major Stuba said. Good. Gather it up and come with me. You can brief the old man on it. Give you a little FaceTime with him. I hope you have your shit together, Major, Schless said, as he grabbed a pad of paper and led the way out the door. Arriving at General Schwarzkopf's door, General Schless said, Sir, we're ready to give you an update. He motioned for Major Stuba to lay out the maps on the conference table. As Major Stuba laid out the maps, General Schwarzkopf asked him, Jack, how you are doing this fine day? Good, sir, thank you. Jack, I know our current disposition of forces on both sides, so we don't need to plow through that again. What I want is your best estimate of what additional forces I'm going to need to drive them out of Saudi and back to Iraq, Schwarzkopf stated. Sir, we've looked at his current disposition of forces. Starting in the UAE, we feel it will take 2 Marine divisions to clear the area of Kalba Fujairah Khor Fakkan, with 1 division coming over the beach and another striking the southern flank and overland from Boubacara. We'll also need 1 division to strike Al Ain to hold those forces in place, and 1 division to strike south of Al Ain and encircle to prevent any escape or reinforcement. The bulk of the division at Al Ain is south of the city. In addition, we need 1 division to strike towards Asab. While the divisions are engaging, we use deep battle assets to hit the division in Abu Dhabi, or at least hold him in place. That right there is 5 divisions, not counting the 101st and 82nd over to the west. Once successful, those 5 divisions will now have the 9X Corps, which is still in Saudi Arabia, to contend with, and it has 6 divisions of which 2 are committed in Al-Jubail and Dammam, respectively. Sir, We see this as a phased operation in the East, with Phase 1 being the liberation of the UAE and the second being the liberation of Saudi. At a minimum, sir, we need 10 divisions for the Eastern Campaign alone. And the Western Campaign? General Schwarzkopf asked. The 16th Airborne Corps is holding its own in that rugged terrain. We feel we should continue to just remain in a defensive posture there until Phase 1 is complete. We can then re-examine the situation in the West and decide what additional forces we need there. You do realize that if we ask for more divisions, at some point, they're going to have to call up the National Guard divisions, Schwarzkopf said. Sir, that should not be our concern. We're the war fighters. The Pentagon and the DoD are the suppliers. They leave it up to us to prosecute this fight, and it's up to them to supply us. How they do that shouldn't be our concern, General Schless said. All right, draft up a message requesting additional forces. In addition, I would like to have 3 Copers from Fort Hood and 7 Corps from Germany as the control headquarters. We want mechanized and armored divisions. If they have to activate a National Guard division, so be it. Get it drafted and I'll sign it. You have got to be shitting me, Mr. Cheney said when he read the request that General Powell had just handed him. He wants 2 Corps headquarters and 7 more divisions. Do we have 7 more divisions to send him? He asked. Sir, we have the 1st Infantry Division, the 2nd Armored Division, and the 4th Infantry Division here in the States. The 25th in Hawaii is committed to the Pacific, as is the 2nd at Fort Lewis. The 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment is on its way over, and the 197th Infantry Brigade is already there. The 10th Mountain at Fort Drum, New York, is about all that's left, and it's a light infantry unit, Powell outlined. We have units in Europe we can draw from that'll strip them from NATO, which is going to cause problems with the other members. Well, they can just suck it up or join us. Their choice, Cheney said under his breath, making a note. Colin, are you telling me we're going to have to activate National Guard units? Are we that desperate at this point? He asked, as he slumped into his chair behind his desk. Mr. Secretary, that's what I'm telling you, unless we can get the British and the Egyptians to send us more forces, Powell said. Cheney sat for a minute and said nothing. Powell could see the wheels turning in the secretary's head. Finally, Cheney reached for the intercom. Mike, he called his military aide, get General Conway and ask him to come over here for a meeting. Also see if the president can put us on his calendar for today for a sit-down, and see if Mr. Baker can join us. Hanging up the phone, he said, Colin, have a list of recommendations for which National Guard units we want to activate. This is going to require a partial mobilization order from the President. Mr. President, I have here a request from CENTCOM for additional forces, 7 more divisions to start with, which means a lot of supporters as well for those divisions from Corps' assets. We have some assets here in the States that we can send, but that's only the 4 divisions that are not committed at this time. The options are we could strip a division or 2 out of Europe, or we could ask the British and the Egyptians for more assistance, Cheney said. Dick, I don't like the idea of stripping divisions out of Europe at this time. The Soviet Union is falling apart, and there's no telling what some people will do in desperate times. Are there no other options? The President asked. Sir, we could activate a National Guard division to make up for 1 or 2 of the shortfalls, Cheney said reluctantly. I take it you don't like that option, the President said, sitting back in his chair in the Oval Office, while the others were on the opposing couches. Mr. President, it's an option, but one with a lot of strings attached. On the positive side, it would bring the nation into this war, and if the past holds, the nation will get behind this action, as these are hometown boys getting into the fight. On the negative side is a train-up period to ensure we're sending trained units into the fight, and not untrained men for cannon fodder, Cheney said. How long of a train-up are we looking at? The President asked. Sir, Powell said, to activate a division, move it to home station, in processing procedures to include physicals, dental checks, and immunizations. We're looking at least 2 months. Then train-up and evaluations are another 4 months. At best, sir, it'll be 6 months before they could deploy to the theater. To do that, we're going to need congressional support and a partial mobilization order. Sir, Cheney interjected, under Title 10, United States Code 12302, partial mobilization will allow for a call-up of 1 million reservists and National Guardsmen for a period of 24 months. Presidential call-up under U.S. Code 12304 only allows 200,000 to be called up, and for only 270 days. That's not enough time, I'm afraid, to train up and deploy a National Guard division. So, gentlemen, what I'm hearing is a recommendation to bring congressional leaders in and go for partial mobilization. Where those National Guard divisions come from, however, is still up to us, correct? The President asked, thinking out loud. Everyone nodded in agreement. We call up a National Guard division. Depending on how well they do at the National Training Center, we can send them to the theater, or we can send them to backfill an active division out of Europe. Am I correct? The President asked. Yes, sir. It's your call on where we send them, Cheney answered. The President was quiet for a moment, lost in thought. General Conway, you understand our position on calling up National Guard divisions? I don't want to hear any pissing and moaning in the press because you or some of your staff are dissatisfied with what units are being called up or committed to where. Is that understood? Yes, Mr. President, Conway said with a satisfied look. He'd gotten what he wanted, a large call-up of the National Guard. I hope you understand that they're going to get an evaluation at the National Training Center, and there will be no patty cakes. I want a realistic, tough evaluation. No one is going to be able to say we sent untrained, unqualified citizen soldiers to their death, the President added. He turned to Mr. Sununu. Call the House and Senate leadership and ask them to come over. We'll need to run this by them. And, Jim, see if the Brits and the Egyptians can send additional ground forces. Let me know if I need to weigh in on that. If there's nothing else, gentlemen. They all rose, knowing the meeting was over.
Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another video.
In the meantime, we have plenty of reading material to keep you busy. You can find it all on our website, frontlinepublishinginc.com.